Drive far enough from any Canadian city and you'll find them. The towns that are quietly dying. You know one when you see it. The main street with more boarded windows than open doors. The school with fewer children every year. The church, the diner, the hardware store, closed or barely hanging on. The young people gone. The population older every year as the elderly stay and the young leave and nobody new arrives to replace them. A place that was once full of life, slowly, gently, emptying out. Across Canada, in 2026, hundreds of small towns are fading. Not dramatically, not in a single blow, just a slow, quiet dimming. One closed business, one departed family, one shuttered school at a time. Until a community that took a century to build is hollowed out in a generation. And here's why this is the right place to end the story we've been telling. Because everything this whole channel has documented, the lost factories, the young people fleeing to cities, the hollowed-out middle class, the joy draining out of ordinary life, all of it comes together, physically, visibly, in the dying small town. If you want to see what's happening to Canada, don't look at a chart. Drive out to one of these towns and walk down the main street. It's all there. Stay with me. First, let's be clear about what a dying small town actually means, because it's more than dots disappearing from a map. Small towns were, for most of this country's history, the backbone of Canada. They grew the food, they cut the timber, mined the ore, ran the mills and the plants. They were tight-knit places where everyone knew everyone, where community was real and physical, where a person could live a whole good life without ever needing a big city. That way of life, affordable, connected, rooted, was a genuine and valuable part of what Canada was. And it's a way of life that offered something the expensive cities increasingly can't. A place where an ordinary person could actually afford to live well. A home you could buy on a normal income. A community that held you. Space, quiet, roots. For generations, the small town was the answer to the question this whole channel keeps asking. Where can an ordinary Canadian afford a good life? So when the small towns die, Canada doesn't just lose some population. It loses one of its last affordable ways of living, one of its deepest sources of community, and a whole vision of what a good, rooted, ordinary life could be. That's what's actually fading out there. Not just towns. An answer. So why are they dying? The first reason, and the one that usually starts it, is that the work left. We told this story in the factories video, and the small town is where it lands. Most small towns existed for an economic reason. A mill, a plant, a mine, a resource, an industry. That was the engine. It was why the town was there, why people came, what the paychecks were built on. The whole community grew up around that work. And when that work leaves, the factory closes, the mill shuts, the industry moves on or automates away, the engine of the town stops. The paychecks that flowed through the diner, the shops, the dealership, the school, they stop flowing. And a town without an economic reason to exist begins, slowly, to unwind. This is the beginning of the death spiral. The work goes, and everything that depended on the work starts to follow. Because here's the brutal truth of a single industry town. It was never just a place people happened to live. It was a place built around a job. And when the job that built it disappears, the town is left standing with no reason underneath it. A body whose heart has stopped, still warm, but no longer alive. The second reason follows directly from the first, and it's the one that seals the town's fate. The young people leave. Put yourself in the shoes of a young person growing up in a town where the work has left. You finish school, and you look around, and there's nothing. No jobs, or only a few low-paying ones. No opportunity, no future you can build. So you do the only rational thing. You leave. You go to the city, chasing the work and the future the town can no longer offer. And this is the cruel trap, because we've documented where they go. They flee to the cities, Toronto, Vancouver, the big centers, and they arrive to find those cities unaffordable too. So the small-town kid is squeezed from both sides. No future in the town they came from. No affordable life in the city they fled to. Caught between a place with no opportunity and a place with no affordability. But for the town, the effect is fatal. When the young leave and don't come back, and no young families arrive to replace them, the town stops renewing itself. The population ages. Every year there are fewer children, fewer workers, fewer people to run the businesses and staff the services and keep the community alive. A town that loses its young people loses its future, literally, because its future was those young people, and they're gone. The third reason is the unraveling, and it's a vicious spiral that accelerates once it starts. As people leave and the population shrinks, the town can no longer support the services it used to have. The school doesn't have enough children, so it closes or consolidates. And now families with kids have no reason to stay or to come. The hospital or clinic can't be sustained, so healthcare moves far away. And now the elderly, who might have stayed, have to leave to be near care. The grocery store loses too many customers and closes. And now there's nowhere to buy food without a long drive. And every one of those closures makes the town less livable, which pushes more people out, which shrinks the population further, which closes more services. It feeds on itself. Once a town tips past a certain point, the decline doesn't just continue, it accelerates, each loss triggering the next, faster and faster, until the town crosses a line from which it can't recover. This is the quiet mechanism that kills small towns. Not one dramatic event, but a cascade. Work, then young people, then services, each falling and pulling down the next, in a spiral that's almost impossible to reverse once it gains momentum. The town doesn't die all at once. It comes apart, thread by thread, until there's not enough left to hold together. But here's the real reason small towns are dying. The shocking one that ties the whole channel together. Canada quietly reorganized itself into an economy that only works in a few expensive cities, and left everywhere else behind. Think about what we've documented across 30 videos. The good jobs concentrated in a handful of cities. The economy shifted toward finance, real estate, and services that cluster in urban centers, and away from the manufacturing and resources that sustained the towns. Wealth and opportunity pooled in a few metros, while the rest of the country was left to fend for itself. Canada became, functionally, a country of a few thriving expensive cities surrounded by a vast landscape being slowly abandoned. And that's the trap that's killing the towns and crushing the cities at the same time. All the opportunity got concentrated in a few places, so everyone has to crowd into those few places to access it, which makes those places impossibly expensive, while everywhere else empties out for lack of opportunity. It's the same broken system producing both problems at once. Unaffordable cities and dying towns are two symptoms of one disease. The country funneled everything into a few centers and abandoned the rest. That's the shock, and it's the whole channel's thesis made physical. The dying small town isn't a separate rural problem. It's the flip side of the unaffordable city. Canada didn't just become expensive, it became concentrated, squeezing its people into a few costly centers, while a whole country of affordable, rooted, ordinary places was allowed to wither. The empty Main Street and the unaffordable condo tower are the same story, told at opposite ends of the country. We built an economy with room for people in only a few places, and everywhere else, the lights are going out. Let me make it real, with the people the cameras never show, the ones who stayed. Picture an older couple in a fading Canadian town. They've lived there their whole lives. They raised their kids there. Kids who've long since moved to the city because there was nothing to keep them. They watched the plant close years ago. They watched the main street go dark, storefront by storefront. They watched the school their grandchildren would have attended shut its doors. And still, they stayed, because it's home, because their whole life is woven into that place, and you don't abandon home just because it's dying. Now the grocery store has closed, and they drive an hour for food. The clinic is gone, and they worry about what happens when their health fails. Their kids beg them to move to the city, and they can't. They can't afford the city, and they can't bear to leave the graves and the memories and the only home they've ever known. So they hold on, in a town growing emptier around them, watching a place they love disappear in real time. That's the human cost the statistics hide. It's not just abstract rural decline. It's real people, often older, often with nowhere else affordable to go, living out their years in communities that are dying around them, grieving a place while they still live in it. And it's the young people, scattered to expensive cities, who can never go home because home no longer offers a life. A whole population uprooted or stranded, all by the same quiet reorganization of the country. And this reaches far beyond the towns themselves, into the future of the entire country. First, there's what the towns do. Small towns and rural communities grow the food, harvest the resources, and steward the land that the whole country depends on. A Canada that hollows out its small towns is a Canada undermining its own food security, its own resource base, its own ability to sustain itself. The cities can't eat without the country. Let the towns die, and you weaken the foundation the cities stand on. Second, there's the concentration risk. A country where everything, the people, the jobs, the wealth, is jammed into a few expensive cities is a fragile country. It's more expensive, more unequal, more crowded, and more vulnerable than a country whose life is spread across many thriving communities. The dying of the towns doesn't relieve the pressure on the cities. It intensifies it, funneling ever more people into ever fewer, ever costlier places. And third, there's what's lost that can't be measured. A whole way of Canadian life. The rooted community. The affordable good life. The connection to the land. The knowledge that you didn't have to win the lottery of an expensive city to live well. When the towns die, that possibility dies with them, and Canada becomes a smaller, narrower, more expensive place. A country where there's only one way to live, and it costs a fortune. And so we arrive, at the end of everything this channel has documented, at the dying small town, because it's where the entire story becomes visible in a single frame. Walk that main street one more time and see it all. The closed factory at the edge of town, that's the lost work. The boarded shops, that's the vanished middle class and the drained-away joy. The shut school, that's the young people gone. The for sale signs and the empty homes, that's the affordability crisis inverted. A place people are leaving instead of one they can't afford to enter. The elderly holding on, that's the human cost of it all. Every single thing we've talked about, standing together on one quiet street. This is what the numbers actually mean. Behind every chart about jobs and housing and migration is a real place, with a real name, where real people are watching their community fade. The dying small town is Canada's story made physical. Not an abstraction, but a main street you can walk down, where you can see, with your own eyes, a country that reorganized itself into a few expensive centers and left everywhere else behind. That's the whole thesis of this channel. Standing on one street, Canada didn't just get more expensive. It got more concentrated, more unequal, and more hollow. Thriving in a few places, fading everywhere else. And ordinary people are being squeezed out at both ends, priced out of the cities and stranded in the towns. The unaffordable city and the dying town are the same wound, seen from two directions. So where does this go? And where does that leave us, at the end of all of it? Some towns will find a way to survive, by attracting remote workers who can finally live anywhere, by finding a new industry, by the very unaffordability of the cities eventually pushing people back out toward the affordable places. That's the genuine hope. If the cities become impossible enough, and if work becomes location-free enough, the towns could be reborn as the affordable answer they always were. Some communities are betting on exactly that. But it won't happen on its own. It requires the same thing this whole channel keeps arriving at. A country that decides, deliberately, to spread opportunity instead of concentrating it, to make good lives possible in many places instead of a few, to stop funneling everything into a handful of costly centers. The dying town and the unaffordable city have the same cure. An economy with room for ordinary people to build good lives, in many places, at prices they can actually afford. That's been the whole story, across all of it. From the unsold trucks to the empty condos, to the closing restaurants, to this final quiet main street. One country, quietly running out of room for its own ordinary people. And the question the whole channel has been building toward, standing now on a dying main street at dusk, What kind of country do we want to be? One that thrives in a few expensive places and lets the rest go dark, or one with room for everyone to live a good life? I want to hear from you, for this one and for all of them. Are you from a small town that's dying? What was it and what's left? Did you have to leave a place you loved because there was no future there? And do you think Canada's small towns can come back? Tell me in the comments below. And thank you, genuinely, for watching this channel and following this story. If it's resonated with you, subscribe to Canada Insider, share these videos with someone who needs to see them, and stay with us. Because understanding what's happening is the first step to changing it, and there's a lot more of this story still to tell.